Welcome back, everybody, to The Deep Dive. This time, we're going deep on building up your biological shield.
Ooh, I like that. A biological shield.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about some of the major health threats out there and how to,
Think proactive.
yeah, be proactive about it. Exactly. I've got a presentation here and a Q&A, actually,
Oh, cool.
with an expert in this area. You guys requested him a lot.
Great.
And one of the things that jumped out at me at the very beginning was this idea that we're kind of at a crossroads
Mm.
in healthcare where we've got all this advanced technology and medicine
Yeah, we've got all these things, but
but there are all these huge challenges too.
yeah, it really is a paradox. It
Yeah.
seems like we should be healthier than ever, but we're seeing
Okay.
rising rates of all these chronic diseases.
Yeah. And then on top of that, there's the whole thing with antibiotic resistance,
Right.
which, he predicts that antibiotics might become ineffective
Wow.
pretty soon.
So essentially returning us to a pre-antibiotic era.
Yeah, I mean, imagine like a simple infection or even the flu becoming life-threatening again.
Yeah.
It's kind of a scary thought.
It's a really scary thought.
Yeah.
And it underscores that urgency to build our biological defenses.
Right.
We can't just rely on antibiotics anymore.
Okay, so let's talk about some of these big threats. You mentioned earlier this idea of an epidemiological transition.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So basically, it's this shift in the leading causes of death over time.
Oh,
So, in the past, it was infectious diseases that were the biggest killers.
Mm-hmm.
But as we've gotten better at things like sanitation, hygiene, and medical care,
Right,
those diseases have become less deadly.
right.
So now the major threats are chronic diseases,
Okay.
like heart disease, cancer, even what this expert calls a decline of manliness.
Decline of manliness. Okay, what does that even mean?
Well, I know it's a very provocative term,
Right.
but he's really talking about this decline in overall physical strength
Yeah.
and resilience, particularly in men. And he uses this declining grip strength as a marker of this decline,
Yeah.
which he links to things like lower testosterone and sperm count.
So it's not just about like being able to open pickle jars. It's like a
Yeah.
more fundamental decline in our like biological strength, which could impact our health in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do we go about building up this shield, this biological shield? I know nutrition plays a big role, right? And he seems to have a pretty unique perspective on diet.
He does. He takes an evolutionary approach,
Okay.
looking at what humans have actually eaten for most of our existence.
Okay.
He actually debunks the idea of veganism as a sustainable long-term diet,
Interesting.
drawing on his background in anthropology.
So it sounds like he's advocating for more of like, I guess he called it a carnivore crudivore approach, which is basically like a raw meat diet. He even brought up the Inuit people who
Yeah.
have thrived on a primarily carnivorous diet for generations, right?
Right.
Like it kind of challenges the conventional wisdom
That is-
about healthy eating.
Yeah, for sure.
But I guess even with a good diet, our bodies may need extra support as we age. He even recommends micronutrient supplementation,
Yes.
especially after age 40.
Right. He has a webinar on megavitamins.
Oh, wow.
Gets really into the specifics.
So we got diet, we got supplements. What else is key for building this biological shield?
Well, fasting is another major pillar for him.
Okay.
But he's very specific about the type of fasting he recommends. Profound fasting, he calls it.
Okay.
And he's not talking about just intermittent fasting.
Right.
He's talking about fasts that last 72 hours or more.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're saying that by like doing these longer fasts, we're actually mimicking what our ancestors went through
Yes.
and tapping into our body's like natural survival mechanisms. But why is that so important?
Well, he emphasizes this process called autophagy,
Okay.
which is basically the body's way of cleaning out damaged cells and like recycling components.
Mm-hmm.
And he says profound fasting is the key to activating that process in humans.
He talked about having near-death experiences during some of his longer fasts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's intense. What motivated him to go to those extremes?
He believes profound fasting is really the key to unlocking the longevity and disease prevention benefits
Okay.
that we see in animal studies.
Wow.
And he's done multiple 21-day fasts himself.
Wow.
So he's really passionate about pushing those boundaries.
Now, he's also pretty outspoken about the limitations of conventional medicine
Yes.
and the healthcare system.
He is.
He even goes so far as to say that Big Pharma is more focused on managing symptoms than addressing root causes.
Yeah, he's not afraid to call them out.
Yeah, and he specifically criticizes the American Diabetes Association.
Right.
He believes that their approach is basically keeping people dependent on medication.
Right.
He even showed a chart of like pharmaceutical companies' profits
Wow.
from diabetes medication.
To prove his point.
So if someone's like navigating the healthcare system and they need treatments
Right.
that maybe aren't covered by insurance, like how do they even begin to approach that?
Well, that's where this concept of financial sovereignty comes in.
Okay.
And it's really interesting how this expert achieved financial independence through entrepreneurship
Okay.
to fund his own research.
He said he's been studying independently for 40 years.
Wow.
Doesn't have a single degree.
That's amazing.
And so it sounds like he really believes that like financial well-being is essential to
Yes.
making informed choices about your health.
Absolutely.
Right.
He argues that financial stress can actually have a huge negative impact on our health.
Okay.
And he even plans to include a module on financial sovereignty in his Profound Fasting program.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So before we jump into the Q&A, can we just like recap quickly
Sure.
the key elements of building this biological shield?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've covered a lot,
Yeah.
but I think the core components are optimizing your nutrition,
Yeah. Great.
adding in some targeted micronutrient supplementation,
Okay.
incorporating profound fasting,
Mm-hmm.
and then engaging in regular strength training, and then that final piece, achieving financial sovereignty.
He really stresses that these are the tools that you need to kind of take control
Yes.
of your health destiny.
Be empowered.
It's empowering.
Take charge.
Yeah. But it's also a little overwhelming, right? Like, where should someone even begin?
Right, and I think that's where this Q&A comes in.
Okay.
He tackles a wide range of questions from the audience and offers like really specific advice
Okay.
and insights on how to apply these principles in real life.
Great. Let's dive into that Q&A after a quick word from our sponsor.
We are back and ready to dive into this Q&A with the expert.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting to me.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Let's see how we handle some of these questions from the audience.
Right.
So one of the first ones is about high ferritin levels,
Okay.
and he suggests donating blood.
Interesting.
Yeah, just donate blood, which makes sense because donating blood can help regulate iron levels in the body,
Exactly.
especially important for men.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is a question about glioblastoma,
Oh, wow.
which is a very aggressive brain cancer,
Yeah,
and whether profound fasting could be helpful in that situation.
right.
Now, I was glad that he took a very cautious approach here.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's a serious topic.
Yeah, he stresses that cancer patients should never fast without expert guidance,
Right.
which is reassuring.
Yeah.
And he actually mentions that he does have specific resources on metabolic cancer therapy.
Very cool.
So, he's not advocating for a one-size-fits-all approach, which
Right.
I think is important when dealing with serious conditions like this.
Absolutely.
Another question focuses on immune decline, or what's known as immunosenescence.
Yeah.
And he brought up something that kind of surprised me, which is that common medications can actually suppress the immune system.
It's true. We don't often think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense, but it's not something that I'd really considered before.
Yeah.
He also highlights the vital role of zinc in immune function.
Yeah, he talks about how zinc helps produce interferons,
Right.
which are critical for fighting off viruses.
And he even references his book where he goes into more detail on that.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that he's pretty skeptical of, like, those detox products
Yeah,
that you see everywhere these days.
he is.
Why do you think he's against that?
Well, he emphasizes minimizing toxin exposure in the first place,
Okay.
rather than relying on products which may not have much scientific backing.
Right.
He says the best approach is to support your body's natural detoxification processes
Right.
through the liver and kidneys.
Makes sense. Makes sense. There's a question about ELA, which is also known as Lou Gehrig's disease.
Yeah.
And conventional medicine often offers little hope in that area.
Yeah.
But I found it interesting that he was actually pretty optimistic about it.
Yeah, me too. Me
Well,
too.
He suggests that functional medicine approaches may have more to offer
Yeah.
than conventional treatments.
A glimmer of hope
Yeah.
in a difficult situation.
Okay, there are a few questions about exercise, too.
Okay.
One listener asked about strength training and longevity.
Hmm.
And it turns out he is a big advocate of strength training.
He is, yeah.
He's actually a black belt in Luta Livre.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he believes that strength training, especially lifting heavy weights, has a far greater impact
Wow.
on overall health and function than doing cardio, like jogging.
Interesting.
He suggests that just 20 minutes of intense strength training, like 5 times a week
Wow.
can be more beneficial than, hours of jogging.
That's a powerful statement.
Yeah. And he also talked about the importance of rest,
Yeah.
suggesting that we replace the word rest with circadian regulation.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So, true rest isn't just about the quantity of sleep, but aligning your sleep-wake cycles with your natural circadian rhythms.
So it's about quality sleep at the right time for your body.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Let's see. Another question tackles the difference between intermittent fasting and his profound fasting approach.
Oh, okay.
And I admit I'm still a little fuzzy on why he thinks that 72-plus hour fast is so important. Like,
Yeah.
what's the big deal?
Right.
Why not just do the intermittent fasting?
Well, he argues that while intermittent fasting is popular, it doesn't actually produce the same benefits for humans
Okay.
as it does for smaller animals because of, like, our metabolic rate.
Okay.
He uses this analogy of music.
Okay.
He says even beautiful notes and harmonies wouldn't have the same impact
Right.
without periods of silence.
Okay.
Our bodies need those periods of digestive silence to really reset.
So you're saying that by fasting for these longer periods, we're kind of giving our bodies a chance to really, clean house
Yes,
and repair damage.
exactly.
It almost sounds like a spiritual practice as much as a physical one.
I think there's something to that.
Yeah.
He even connects it to our evolutionary history,
Okay.
pointing out that our ancestors experienced periods of food scarcity.
Right.
So our bodies are actually adapted to thrive in those conditions.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, I know he did multiple 21-day fasts himself.
He did, yeah.
And he also mentioned that after age 40, even the best diet may not provide all the micronutrients we need.
Right, emphasizing the importance of supplementation.
Right. And he has that Mega Vitamins webinar for
Right.
that.
Exactly.
Now, there were a few questions that delved into some pretty complex topics, like using chlorine dioxide
Okay.
to combat antibiotic resistance.
Oh, wow.
Now, he was cautious about that. He acknowledged that it is a powerful antiseptic,
Yeah.
but he's not convinced that it could actually replace antibiotics.
Right.
And he's concerned about its interaction with vitamin C,
Yeah.
which is, essential for human health.
Right, of course.
Another hot topic was the role of vitamin C, both orally and intravenously.
Mm-hmm.
So what was his take on that?
Well, he explained that vitamin C is a water-soluble nutrient,
Okay.
so it doesn't accumulate in the body.
Okay.
So he believes that regular oral intake is generally sufficient for most people,
Okay.
though there might be situations where intravenous administration could be beneficial,
Right.
certain circumstances.
Gotcha. There was also a question about, the difference between taking zinc and getting enough zinc through your diet.
Yeah,
And it sounded like he prefers food over supplements,
he does.
whenever possible.
He stresses that supplements aren't a magic bullet.
Right.
A balanced, nutrient-dense diet is still the foundation
Right.
for a healthy immune system.
Okay, let's see. Someone asked about ALS, and he expressed some optimism that functional medicine approaches might be able to help.
Yeah, which again provides some hope
Yeah.
where conventional medicine may fall short.
He also talked about the potential of fasting to help heal and possibly even reverse some autoimmune conditions like Crohn's disease.
Right.
What about ozone therapy? That seems to be gaining popularity these days.
Yeah, it's definitely trendy.
What was his take on that?
So he acknowledged that there is some evidence
Okay.
supporting ozone therapy for certain conditions,
Mm-hmm.
but he really stressed the need for more rigorous research,
Okay.
particularly randomized controlled trials.
Right, so more data.
More data before making any strong recommendations.
Right, which seems to be a recurring theme with him.
Yeah, he's very data-driven,
Yeah.
which I appreciate.
Me too, me too. He also got a question about a holistic approach to cancer treatment,
Okay.
which I was very curious to hear his thoughts on.
Me too.
He recommended his book on integrative oncology
Cool.
as a starting point,
Yeah,
emphasizing the importance of knowledge and informed decision-making.
right. You have to be your own advocate.
Yeah, when you're dealing with cancer.
Absolutely.
So he's not just talking about, diet and lifestyle changes,
Right.
but also about, targeted therapies
Right.
that address the underlying metabolic dysfunction
Yeah,
in
that's how-
cancer cells.
He's taking a personalized approach to cancer care,
Yeah.
recognizing that each patient is different.
So what else stood out to you from his response on that?
Well, he highlighted the importance of detoxification,
Okay.
immune function,
Right.
hormone balance,
Okay.
and even mental and emotional well-being
Yeah.
and cancer recovery.
So like the whole picture,
A whole picture, yeah.
a truly holistic approach.
Exact.
He even talked about the power of laughter
Oh, wow.
and humor in boosting the immune system
And
from promoting healing.
There's power in that.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this Q&A,
We have.
but there are two more questions I want to touch on before we wrap up.
Okay, sounds good.
The first is about fasting and celiac disease.
Okay.
And he reassured listeners with celiac disease that fasting can actually be beneficial
Interesting.
and potentially even healing. He stressed that profound fasting works with the body's natural healing mechanisms to
Yeah.
restore balance.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, one listener asked about using dichloroacetate, or DCA,
Okay.
to reactivate mitochondrial function.
Right.
Now, this is a bit of a controversial topic.
It is.
So I was curious to hear what he had to say.
You too?
He acknowledged that DCA has shown promise in preclinical studies,
Okay.
but he expressed concerns about its toxicity
Right.
and the lack of research on its use in humans.
Right. So more research is needed before
Exactly.
we start recommending that to people.
Yeah, so it sounds like he's not ruling it out completely,
Right.
but he's urging caution.
And he's always prioritizing safety and evidence-based practices.
Okay, so we have covered quite a bit of ground in this Q&A.
We have. It's been a whirlwind.
This expert clearly has a wealth of knowledge and is very passionate about
Yeah.
this topic,
He is definitely.
and helping people achieve optimal health.
Yeah.
His approach to building a biological shield is comprehensive. It's challenging.
And it makes you think.
It does. It makes you think.
It challenges conventional thinking.
For sure. And it encourages us to really take control
Yeah.
of our health destiny.
Absolutely.
So I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
But before we do, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
So this expert has given us a lot to think about in terms of building that biological shield.
Yes.
If you could only choose one step
Okay.
to take today based on everything we've discussed,
Hmm.
what would it be?
That's a great question.
It really forces you to prioritize and think about,
Yeah. What's going to have the most impact?
what's going to have the most impact on your health?
Right.
For me, I think what really stood out was his focus on financial sovereignty.
Yeah.
It's not something we typically think about when we talk about health,
Right.
but he makes a compelling case for why it's so crucial.
Yeah. I mean, financial stress can be such a burden.
Yeah.
And it really
Yeah.
does impact our mental and physical health.
And achieving that financial independence can really free you up
Yes.
to focus on all those other pillars that he talks about.
Absolutely.
Right. And it gives you access to
Yeah.
treatments and interventions that might not be covered by traditional insurance.
Exactly.
So it's not just about reducing stress.
Right.
It's about having more options
Yeah. And more control.
and control over your health journey.
It's empowering.
It is empowering.
Yeah.
This whole deep dive has really challenged my perspective on what it means to be healthy.
I agree.
It's not just about avoiding disease.
Right.
It's about building this foundation of strength
Mm-hmm.
and resilience that can help us thrive.
And he's not promising a quick fix
Right.
or a magic bullet.
He's giving us a framework
Ugh.
to take ownership and create a life of vitality.
Yeah. And he encourages us to be skeptical, too,
Yes.
to question those assumptions.
Yeah.
And to really think critically about all the information
Absolutely.
that's out there. And it's refreshing to hear that.
It is.
From expert.
To really take responsibility
Yeah.
and be in the driver's seat.
So he's reminded us that the journey to optimal health is a lifelong pursuit.
It is.
It's about constant learning, adapting, and being open to new ideas.
Yeah, those consistent, sustainable choices.
And he's given us the tools and the knowledge to work with.
Absolutely.
So now it's up to us to take that information and apply it
Yeah, make it your own.
in a way that makes sense for our individual lives.
He's really ignited that spark of curiosity
Yeah.
and inspired us to take control of our health destiny.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, this was great.
We hope you found it insightful and empowering.
I know I did.
Until next time, stay curious and keep diving deeper.
Say